Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck. Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
We are stoked to partner with Garage Grown Gear on this episode of Hiker Trash Radio. Garage Grown Gear, or GGG for short, is your online store for all things ultralight backpacking. Dedicated to supporting the growth of small and cottage brands, they've got everything you need all in one place. From ultralight accessories to dehydrated meals to your big three, Garage Grown Gear has everything you need to lighten your load. Based out of St. Paul, Minnesota, GGG is known for its commitment to providing quality ultralight gear, stellar customer service, and free shipping and returns over $40.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, help us out. Take just a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like what we're doing, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, we have a very special episode for you today. Last week, there were some pretty big happenings in Tennessee, in Frozen Head State Park to be very specific. The 39th running of the Barkley Marathons took place, and we had some record-setting events. We had 5 finishers for the first time ever, and we had the first female finisher as well. Joining us today to share his experience is the first place finisher on his very first attempt in what is probably the world's toughest ultra, Ihor Verys. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, Ihor. How's it going?
Hey, Doc. Good. Thanks for having me on your pod.
We are very excited to have you because, as my longtime listeners know, I am a little bit obsessed with the Barkley Marathons. And so anytime I have a chance to talk to somebody who's even been to Frozen Head State Park, we take a deep dive into what's going on out there with this crazy race put together by Laz Lake. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Doc.
Now, yes. Now, we do have a common acquaintance because I interviewed Frank the Tank Heelan from Belgium. His episode has not come out yet. And so it will be coming up, I believe. And I reached out to you. I know that he reached out to you. I reached out to him. I was doing everything I could to try and get in touch with you. And lo and behold, here we are. So a big shout out to Frank the Tank. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, Frank is the best.
Now, as we are speaking tonight, where are you calling in from, Ihor?
From my home, from Chilliwack, British Columbia, Canada.
British Columbia, a beautiful place, kind of an adventure capital to itself. I mean, there's a lot of great things to do outdoors there.
Yeah, it's a trail paradise. Definitely a place to be if you're an outdoorsy person.
And have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before, Ihor?
Some tidbits, yeah.
Okay. I only ask because I want to make sure that you are aware of a segment that we have towards the end of every episode called the hiking hack. And that's when I will turn to you and I will ask you to share some of your trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. Think of it as like a pro tip for the outdoors. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Let's get to our very first segment.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
That's right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. Now, I love to talk about gear on the podcast, Ihor, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest's adventure gear. So if you were preparing for your next adventure, say, next year's Barkleys, and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you'd insist on being packed? Give me all the details on that piece of gear. Tell me why you've got to have it out there. So, Ihor, what is that item in your toolkit? What do you have to have out there?
For Barkley?
Yes.
Well, for Barkley, you need to have a lot of stuff. You can't really pinpoint. But as you know, Barkley and Frozen Hat State Park is notorious for its really crappy weather, which did not happen this year. Neither did it happen last year. But you got to be prepared for that. Therefore, you do have to have a good rain jacket. So that's my advice. Pack that one because it will protect you from wind, from rain, because it happens so often that people DNF'd because of gear, because of gear malfunction or not having a proper gear. And if you do end up going to Barkley, you definitely don't want to DNF because you did not have a good jacket.
That's right. You want to make sure you have everything you need so that you give yourself the best possible chance to get some loops in. Now, 2 years in a row with good weather. I mean, is this climate change in action? Is Laz going to change the start of the race to maybe late November, mid-December?
No, I don't think so. No, it's not going to happen. I mean, it was just locked out for sure with the weather. I'm pretty sure next year it's going to be horrible. Yeah, it's just more like an exception from the rule. And if anything, we did get a downpour an hour after the end of Barkley. So it's as if the skies just let us do it, this thing. And then it opened up. And a couple of days prior at Barkley, we also had pretty bad weather. But during the race, it was pretty much perfect. I mean, it did get a little bit hot during the day, but you know what? You want to take hot over rain and over fog because, navigating hot weather is still very, very enjoyable.
What an ideal weather window. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too far into the Barkleys, let's back up a little bit. I would like to hear about your background and where you grew up. What kinds of activities were you involved in as a kid? And how in the world did you get involved in the ultra running cult?
Yeah, I grew up in Ukraine. That's where I'm originally from. I lived there till the age of 20, 21. Wasn't really particularly talented in any sport. Did a little bit of everything. We played a lot of soccer, sport number one in Ukraine, but I wasn't really interested in running, didn't do track, didn't do cross country, anything like that. In fact, I actually didn't like running in general. I did do a lot of walking because it was part of our lifestyle. We didn't really own vehicles, so walking was something we would do on a regular basis, and it was normal. But then I moved to Canada in 2015 as a student, and then I got into running because I was looking for some sport to get into, so that would help me to clear my head, to kind of sort out things as I'm here navigating through new country. And running was just affordable sport because all you need is a couple of runners and you're good to go. And so I got into running probably a year after I moved to Canada. So it was 2016, 2017. Did a few half marathons, and other road races. And then COVID happened and I transitioned to trails. Discovered trails, discovered ultra running, and other friends who kind of showed me the world of ultra running. Attempted a few FKT routes and signed up for my first race, which was 100K. And yeah, I just snowballed from there. been doing long distance races, and then backyard happened, and now Barkley. So yeah, I'm still relatively new to it, so I'm kind of learning things here and there, what's working, what's not, um, and still trying to figure out this ultra running thing.
I that just strikes me. It really resonates with me, and it makes me happy to hear you talk about that, because all of our listeners out there who are thinking of themselves, I'm not particularly athletic. I don't particularly like running. Here I am talking to a guy who fit that same bill a few years ago, and he finished first on the Barkley Marathons, like the world's toughest race. And so, I mean, that kind of gives hope and inspiration to a lot of people out there. I mean, if someone who is not particularly athletic and who didn't particularly like running finishes first at the Barkley, I mean, that means that, the doors open kind of for the rest of us as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Doc. If you have a dream and you put your head down and work on it hard, it doesn't have to be decades, especially if you're really passionate about it. I discovered this passion and I got obsessed with it, and I worked on it day and night, and yeah, eventually it came to fruition. And they usually say if you do something you really like, you end up doing it really well, and I feel like that's what I've discovered. Running became my passion, my hobby.
Now, Ihor, would you say that you have an obsessive personality? I mean, when you find something, do you really go down the rabbit hole on it?
Yes, I think you can say that about me. I usually either, if I do something, I want to perfect it. I either do it or perfect or not do it at all. Okay.
And, I talk to a lot of thru hikers on the podcast, and I like to ask them when they first became aware of maybe the PCT, this trail that goes from the Mexican border all the way to Canada, and how mind-boggling that is. In your case, I'm not going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you about when you first became aware of the Barkley Marathons. Do you remember that moment when you first discovered that this crazy race existed, and what was your reaction?
Yeah, I think the first movie I watched about Barkley was about my neighbor Gary Robbins, Where Dreams Go to Die, by Eden Newberry. And I was traumatized just watching that video. I was crying at the end when I was watching Gary there and on the right next to the gate where I just was a couple of days ago. And I was crying watching him, seeing how much he's gone through. He was this close to finish this race. And at that point, that race scared me. So it was probably year 2019, 2020 that I watched it. And I told myself, there's no way I'll never do this race. Like, hell no, you got to be really mentally, with mental issues to attempt even this race. And, but, things changed. I was doing more and more racing, went into 100K, 100-mile races, and then I did backyard. And during one of my backyard races, when I was at 60 hours mark, I clearly remember that it was the Satellites Championship 2022 National Championship. And we went 67 hours, but at hour 60, it kind of clicked in my head. This is the cutoff for Barkley. So I can be awake. I can keep moving for 60 hours. Yes, I understand that different exertion level, you got to climb. There's no aid station, so it's way more horrible. But just that time frame gave me that idea that what if I could? What if I could? Why not? And from there, I worked towards this Barkley goal. Ever since.
That's interesting to see that evolution there, because you're right. That movie, Where Dreams Go to Die, traumatizing. Very, very tragic. I mean, very emotional. You feel so bad for the guy. And, your mindset at that point thinking there's no way, only crazy people do this, to then, doing the backyard and having that 60-hour mark kind of click in your head and realize, maybe this is something that's possible. And that 60-hour mark, 60 hours of exertion with not a whole lot of sleep. I mean, do you have to build up to that? I mean, how much training did you do in the area of constant exertion and sleep deprivation? Because that becomes a big factor in the Barkley.
Well, I don't think you can train sleep deprivation. I don't think it's really smart, in my opinion, to kind of force yourself not to sleep and go run, because then you kind of set yourself for injuries. I find you just have to experience it in race environment, the sleep deprivation aspect. With me, in my life, I had those experiences where I had to push through sleep deprivation. It had nothing to do with racing, just my earlier life as I was a student trying to make living while going to school. So I dealt a lot with those moments where I had to run on or live on little to no sleep. And I feel like that experience helps me a little bit nowadays to navigate in this world of ultra running. But training wise, I never train sleep deprivation per se. Like, I don't think it is a smart way to approach training. But again, I'm not a coach, but I never do it, and it works for me. I train other aspects, and then I deal with sleep deprivation when it comes during the race. So in my opinion, you do need sleep to recover. That's the time where your muscles are actually growing. Because if you're training and you're not sleeping, well, you're going to injure yourself, right? The whole idea of training is getting better. And if you're not sleeping, well, you're not getting better, right?
Very good point right there. But also the takeaway is those college students who are now listening, who are cramming for finals and not getting a whole lot of sleep over the course of 3, 4, 5 days. I mean, that's training for the Barkley right there. So, there is hope. There is hope.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Gary Robbins being your neighbor, I had heard that he was your neighbor. And I saw him in pictures at the Barkley. And I was combing through pictures through Instagram and saw him in the background of some pictures. And so was he affiliated with you? Was he your crew member at the Barkley?
No. So Gary ended up crewing John Kelly because he's his friend as well. I was crewed by Jody Eisner. He's another Canadian legend who is actually the very first Canadian Barkley fun runner. Gary's neighbor, great friend, and one of the biggest inspirations. I remember right after the race, he was right there, gave me this big hug, and I just told him, let's agree, Gary, on one thing, that Barkley is where dreams go to live, not to die.
Love it. Love it. Now, if I had Gary Robbins or John Kelly or Jared Campbell, who was my neighbor, I'd be knocking on their door maybe every other day, just talking about, striking up a conversation about, some aspect of the Barkley. Did you find yourself doing that leading up to this year's race?
Well, no, not really. I didn't want to be a creep. And, Gary's already popular enough, and he's being, not stalked, but, he doesn't like this much attention from people. And when they come and knock and try to bug him, he wants to have his own life. He has his family, his business, and I don't want to be one of those creepers. We did go for a few runs with Gary, and I can easily just message him and say, hey, let's go for a run. He would always gladly joins me, or I join him on some of his adventures. But I didn't end up we didn't end up talking Barkley about him because partially I felt like Barkley is such a mysterious theme that I'm not even supposed to share with anyone, even with Gary. If he knows, he knows, but otherwise I shouldn't talk about it.
Don't take that risk. Don't talk to anybody unnecessarily too much about the finer details of the Barkley and preparing for the Barkley. Yeah, you don't want to get blacklisted.
Yeah, and the rules were pretty strict this year with Gary Cantrell. He made it really clear that there's no way you can share it publicly. And even if you tell a friend who ends up sharing it somewhere in media, you can be kicked out just because of that. So, in the true Barkley fashion, we were all, keeping it quiet. It's a secret club, the first rule of the Fight Club, you don't talk about the Fight Club.
That's right. I mean, I was waiting to see, what was going to be happening. I had friends who were monitoring people's Instagram accounts, trying to figure out where they were, if they had left yet, if there was any kind of sign that the Barkley was starting soon. And then just out of nowhere, it's on. The Barkley has started. So I think Gary Cantrell did a good job kind of prepping you guys to keep it top secret, because we didn't hear a lot of buzz until it was actually underway.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that, and it made it interesting for spectators to watch too, because it was boiling up, and now bam, it happens, and everyone on Twitter, installing X again and following Keith Dunn, and many people just upload Twitter just because of this event, just to watch the updates by Keith Dunn.
That is so funny, because with all the drama of Twitter and X and everything that's going on with that platform, I'd done the same thing. I had uninstalled it, and then I'm like, okay, the Barkley's going to start soon. I reinstalled it and started refreshing on Keith Dunn as much as possible. Now, I'm not asking you to reveal anything. I'm just asking for your general sense, because I don't want to invade his privacy. But any idea if Gary will ever go back?
Gary Robbins?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to ask him. I have no idea, to be honest. It's just the question you'll have to address to him. I never discussed that with him.
Okay. All right. We'll get him on here. I'll ask him the question. That's good suggestion. Now, Ihor, when you're not running around the off trail in Frozen Head, what do you do for a living? How do you finance your life?
Yeah, I work in insurance. I'm a commercial insurance account manager. So deal with commercial clients and work on their insurance, help them out with all the insurance needs and boring stuff. Sometimes it's exciting, sometimes it's stressful, and therefore running helps, to vent. But I definitely spent a lot of hours in the office, but I am standing in the office. Most of the time I have a standing desk, so that's bonus time on feet for me. Counts towards the training.
Now, do your clients or coworkers realize who they're working with here? Do they know that they are working with the guy who finished first in the Barkley Marathons?
Well, I have amazing coworkers, and they're always supportive when it comes to racing. And every time I finish a race, there's always celebration after. There's some potluck, and it's mostly females I work with, and I really, really love them, and they love me back. So we have a really good relationship. And I mean, I guess they don't really understand the importance of Barkley to an extent. So maybe to them it's just another race. But they all congratulated me as always. We had like a little celebration when I returned.
Yeah, every year this time of year, I will share with my coworkers, hey, the Barkley is underway, and I'll explain to them what the Barkley is all about. And I have converted quite a few people to subscribing to Twitter and following Keith Dunn and hitting the refresh button and reading the news on it. And then I've even had some listeners who know my obsession about the Barkley, who had never heard anything about the Barkley before listening to Hiker Trash Radio. I've had some listeners message me and say, hey, you know what? I had no idea about this race till I listened to the podcast, and now I'm hooked, and I'm following as closely as I can. And so I think I've done my part to convert a few people out there. And it sounds like you're doing the same at your place of work. But if I were you, I would be leveraging my Barkley finish with my customers. I'd use it in some kind of, advertising ploy to get some more customers out there. They want to work with the guy who finished the Barkley. This is the guy that can get things done.
Yeah, you're talking like my boss, who is kind of thinking forward and, thinking in sales numbers all the time. So how can we use Ihor Verys, to get more accounts here? But yeah, I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
Nice. Now, at what point did you decide, okay, I've hit the 60-hour mark in the backyard. I think this is something that is possible. I'm going to actively investigate and research the application process for the Barkleys, and let's give this a shot.
Yeah, pretty much right after the backyard. I started. Well, first I met Jody Eisner, who was my crew, Barkley, and he was doing the backyard as well. He was on the national team, and we hit it off with him there nicely. And I was like joking, hey, if I hit like 100 loops, maybe you'll help me out to figure out how it all works with Barkley. And we kind of giggled, made it all a joke. But he was one of my mentors and still is one of the greatest guys out there who helped me out in this process. And then I started doing a lot of reading, got on Matt Mahoney's website, and going from there, all the links, all the possible posts, reports, pictures, because actually you can figure out on your own so much about Barkley process. I know it's secret, it's mysterious, but you can find 95% of all the information out there in the internet. It's available. You just have to look for it. You just have to spend a lot of countless hours researching, reading the reports, putting two things together, and it all comes clear at the end what to do and how to get in.
As you started that segment right there, I was thinking, okay, the secret to getting into the Barkleys, because it's top secret. You're right. The application process, it's not widely advertised. There's no how-to anywhere. And so as you were talking about talking to Jody, I was thinking, okay, maybe the key to getting into the Barkley, doing the application, is you need to find a mentor. You need to find somebody who's done it before and kind of work one-on-one with that person to figure it out. But you're saying that actually, if you work hard enough, if you look close enough and put two and two together, you can find most of the process on how to do it online.
It's all there. I'm telling you, Doc, it's all there. And, you can read some reports of John Kelly, some of his posts, and he explains a lot. And then once you go on Matt Mahoney's website, he summarizes a lot of information there for people. So you don't even need to do a lot of digging. You just go on his website and, follow the links, and you'd be surprised how much information you can find there. You can literally see the old school pictures from the course. If you go back to like 90s, and back in the day, people were allowed to have phones on the course, and they would take pictures, of these infamous spots on the course. So you can actually see it with your eyes before you even go to Barkley. It takes a lot of work, but if you're really obsessed with it, if you really want to be as much prepared as possible, you just have to do some work. But it's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So John Kelly, Matt Mahoney, you said? Those are a couple of good places to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do some digging. Have fun. I mean, there's a lot of fun information. All those reports. I love reading reports about, Barkley adventures, because usually what you see is just pictures at the gate. You don't really know what's happening out there. And once you start reading, oh boy, some dark things are happening there. And they're so much fun. It's just like reading a book,
Yeah, that gate, that nice yellow gate, that's the last happy piece of scenery you're going to have. I think beyond the gate, it's all a very scary place in the mind of a lot of people out there.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I have no intention of applying to the Barkley, but I think doing a deep dive down the rabbit hole of John Kelly and Matt Mahoney's websites sounds like a lot of fun. So, I am obsessed. I will take a deep dive. We'll take a cruise through there and just really enjoy the experience.
Yeah.
All right. So you send in your application. You figure it out. You send in your application. How long before you get the notification that you're in, and what does the notification look like?
All depends. It all depends on Laz, because this is his race. It can be a couple of days, it can be a couple of months, can be a couple of weeks, and it can be forever if you get nothing, So sometimes people wondering, is it time about to get your letter or not? And, they might be wondering for months and they're actually out, and then
But Ihor, in your situation, I'm asking about your situation. Yeah. I'm not sure if you're being intentionally cagey and evasive here because you're not allowed to say, or if you're just saying in general, you can't judge by my answer because it could vary from year to year. But in your particular case, you send in the application. How long before you hear?
I knew at the end of last year.
And how long a period was it from submitting the application to finding out?
It was anywhere between a few weeks and a couple months.
Okay. All right. I got you. And was it a letter of condolences like we've heard about?
So that's not a secret. You get a letter of condolences where basically Laz says that you're an absolute fool. applying for a race like Barkley, and you should withdraw as soon as possible because this race is going to destroy you. But yeah, if you do decide to proceed, here's the instructions. Yeah.
Now, I kind of get the sense that Laz is not an email kind of guy. So I'm imagining you going to your mailbox and getting a letter from Laz, this letter of condolence. As you're reading this, what is going through your head? What kind of emotions are you experiencing?
Well, first, you're exceptionally happy because you know that you are one of 40 people who are fortunate enough to receive it. But then you are so scared. It's changing right away. Like, oh my goodness, I got into Barkley. This is the race that eats its young. And now I got to start training because otherwise I'm going to be destroyed there. So it's kind of shifting from happiness to, absolute destruction of mental destruction and fear. But overall, of course, it's a unique opportunity. Not everyone gets it, so I was pretty proud of myself that I was able to somehow convince Laz either by writing an essay or personality, or you never know how he makes that decision. It's all mystery.
Yeah, your essay must have been pretty persuasive. I think John Kelly, I read somewhere that his essay was, hey, Laz, I'm not going to waste your time or mine. I deserve another chance to three-peat, to get my third finish here. And that was basically it. But I know that the essay format and length and topic really depends on the applicant, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a book of the very first Barkley finisher, Ed Furto, Stories from Out There, and he actually puts out there all his essays, the ones that he submitted every year, and they are pretty lengthy, and it's interesting to read and kind of get an idea of maybe what you might or should use in your essay. So again, this is another piece of puzzle available out there.
Putting the puzzle together. I love it. Now, how many days in advance of the race did you arrive at Frozen Head?
So for these 3, so 5 days prior.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is my first year, and I just wanted to make sure that I do some training on the part of the course that I'm allowed to be on. So on the trails, because you're free to go to the trails if you want. You cannot go off trails. That's the only rule. So in a couple of days, it was enough to cover all the trails because most of the course is off trails, so you can't really cover it.
Now, in those 5 days prior to the race and kind of scouting out the trails, staying on trail, following the rules, does this give you more comfort or more discomfort? I mean, do you feel better about being there, or you're like, oh my gosh, it's the terror is becoming even worse?
Yes, it's a bit both, but mostly comfort, to be honest, because I've seen these videos, because again, there's videos out there that Jamil put out, for instance, so you can watch them and what it looks like. But once you're there, it's a bit different. It's clicking different. So you start feeling the park better. So that, okay, so if I get spit out here, I know where I am. Or if we start clockwise, it's like a trail section, so I know where I am. So at least some portions, it gave me confidence that, okay, I might not know 100% of the course, but I do know 10 or 15% of the course, and it's already good, so I won't be lost right away or completely. So it definitely helped me, to feel what it's like, to feel the Frozen Head State Park. Because even when we were driving in and I saw the prison, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is this infamous prison from, from all the movies, from all the pictures, and it gives you goosebumps every time I saw something new, or I saw the gate. And actually, the fun fact about the gate, it's actually small. It's way smaller than it looks like. So that was my first thought. I'm like, it's really small. It's nothing like it's on the videos. For some reason, I pictured it really big and scary, but it's quite small. And But anyways, yeah, we were there in the park. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where all the mystery happening, all these legendary athletes, going through rings of hell, and I get to be here. So yeah, it was like kid, Christmas Day or something.
That's a good approach. I mean, I get to be here. It's like Christmas Day. I mean, that's one way to look at it. It's like the glass half full way of looking at it. And the other way to look at it is, oh my gosh, this is going to kill me. This is going to be brutal. So I guess attitude is pretty important. Now, in terms of what is allowed out on the course, you don't get any kind of GPS device. And Laz does not hand you a map and say, here's an official map of the course. He provides a map, but it's on from the movies I've seen. He places the map on a picnic table and you can hand copy it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's called a master map. So basically, you go get your own map if you want in the park office, or if you're thinking ahead, you would order it months ahead of time, and you would have it before you even arrive to Frozen Head, so you could look at it and at least you could memorize the map itself. But yeah, there's a master map the day before. Laz puts on the table. You also get a list of instructions. So it's not just a map, it's also instructions, what to do, where to go, how to follow. But those instructions are written in a very typical Laz fashion. They're not clear, they're quite blurry, obscure. Sometimes they don't make sense. And sometimes they make sense once you're there, and what he means, it's not what you think it is. So kind of adds a bit oil to that Barkley fire. But yeah, so you got that map and you try to transfer it on your map to the best of your abilities. And then you have a few hours to sleep if you're lucky, and it's a conch time.
Okay. And what did Laz require of all the participants this year? I know some year it's socks, one year was a shirt, sometimes it's orange soda. What was this year's gift to Laz?
Well, I was a virgin, so virgins required to bring $1.60 and license plate. And I believe veterans had to bring socks. And I think those who finished had to bring smokes. I think that's what it was. Yeah. But as a virgin, I just have to bring a license plate and $1.60.
I'm amazed that the price has not gone up over all these years. I mean, it's still the best deal in town, $1.60 for pure torture out in the woods.
1 cent per mile, as he would say.
All right. And the watch is just a watch with a timer on it, or the time?
Yeah, just a cheap Walmart watch. And one person gets the like a touch screen. Once you touch it, it messes everything up. But yeah, I liked how they got the normal watch, and yeah, it's set for race time. So once he lights the cigarette, we got 0000, and then it resets every 24 hours. And it's very helpful. I found watch extremely helpful just to know how fast you're moving. And there were some sections where I would have to time myself, just because I wasn't, to calculate the approximate distance I cover. I do need to know the time elapsed. So even though it is supposedly useless watch, you can find it pretty useful in certain situations.
Okay. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from some advertisers, pay some bills, and when we come back, we're going to get to the race start, and Ihor is going to take us through all 5 loops and that amazing finish. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are talking to Ihor Verys, first place finisher in this year's Barkley Marathons. We heard all about kind of some of the prep and the approach. Actually, we didn't get into a whole lot of the approach. Coming into the race, did you have a specific strategy? Were you going to try and pair up with someone who had finished the race before, like John Kelly or Jared Campbell? Or were you going to strike out on your own? How did you approach that?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to team up with veterans and learn from them as much as possible. It's just I wasn't sure if I could be fit enough, to keep up with them, because I had no idea what pace they're gonna go at, and usually first loop is super fast, but then kind of slows down as you go. And yeah, I was able to be with the lead pack and teamed up with John Kelly, Damon Hole. We got Sebastian there from France, Jasmin Paris, obviously, and we worked pretty good together. And mostly, of course, John was navigating. He's really good at it in natural and frozen head. So I definitely learned a lot from them because they're exceptionally talented navigators, all of them. So I was pretty lucky, to be able to be in the same group with them.
Now, before you get out on the course, let's talk about the start to the race, because this is the most unique start to any race out there, right? You don't get an exact time that the race is going to start. You get a 1 hour warning when the conch shell is blown. And then everybody kind of assembles near the yellow gate. And then the start of the race is with Laz lighting a cigarette.
Yeah, so you get a 12-hour window. The race can start anywhere between 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. So because of their mass finish last year, everyone thought that the start is going to be super, super early. So he can basically blow the conch, say, 11 p.m. So the start would be 12 a.m. And that's why the entire park campground was silent after 8 p.m. because everyone was trying to get some sleep, anticipating that extra early start. But it didn't happen. So he blew the conch at 4:17, which is early, but not too bad. We were able to get at least a few hours of sleep if we were lucky. And yeah, the start is at 5:17, and that hour goes by really fast. By the time you have some food in, put all your gear on, and you go get your watch, and then by the time you do all this stuff, you got to line up and ready to get going.
Now, did you hear about the drama that happened right at the start of the race? There was rumors that two competitors had littered.
Oh, the watch box?
I'm not sure what was littered, but somebody left trash. They said two competitors left trash, and there was going to be possible disqualification. I was wondering, I didn't hear anything else about it, and I was wondering if it was maybe one of the finishers. I mean, to get the news after 60 hours and you completed that you were disqualified because of littering, that would be absolutely heartbreaking. That'd be a new documentary.
I know. I'm glad it didn't happen. I'm pretty sure whoever did it didn't really mean it. Maybe they were rushing and, they were stressed and nervous first thing in the morning and they just forgot it. But I could see Laz, raging about it. He wouldn't let it slide.
Yeah, I imagine there was no ill intent at all because of everything going through your mind and your heart at that time, trying to get ready in the final preparation and the anxiety that could happen to anybody. But a little bit concerning. Now, I know that you were a Barkley version, so you didn't run it last year. But I know that with the three finishers last year, Laz did add in a new section to this year's course, and instead of 13 books, I think there were 15 books this year.
That is correct. Yeah, there were 15 books, and this entire big section. There's a big chunk of trail removed, and new section off trail added, and it was quite a doozy because. Even Jerry Campbell at the end, he said, "You're a bad man," referring to that section.
Yes, I did hear about that. And for some of our listeners who have tuned in accidentally, expecting to hear something about thru hiking today, and we're talking about the Barkley, they have no idea what the Barkley is, and we're talking about these books. Can you give them a little sense of, what is the purpose of the books on this race?
Yeah, so most of the race is off trail in the middle of nowhere. And how do you keep track of runners? How do you know that they go to that point that is on the map? You can't have course marshals. There's no course marshals who would go there. So Laz, and in particular Ed Furto, that's the very first Barkley finisher that I mentioned earlier, he came up with this idea. What would we place books there? And if someone gets to that point, you just rip off the page number that's corresponding to your bib number, and that's basically a proof that you went there. And you would go from one book to another book until you collect all 15 of them. You come back to the start line, and the race director would count your book numbers, and if you have all of them, you're good to go for the next one. Yeah, so that was basically the idea behind having books on the course, just to make sure that runners reach the points that the race director wants them to do.
Okay. Now, you talked a little bit about the first loop and that you stayed with a particular group. At what point in the first loop did you think, okay, this is going pretty well? I think I'm in good position here.
Well, yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, I didn't know what to expect. I thought that everyone's going to be, it starts with a big climb. So I felt like everyone's going to be running or charging up that hill. But all of a sudden, everyone's just power hiking. I'm like, oh, we're power hiking? All right, well, I can do that all day, So I was happy that the pace was power hiking. It wasn't really running uphill, just like you see in vertical kilometers, people run uphill. But it made sense, you're going to climb 20,000 meters or 66,000 feet. You probably want to power hike from the very beginning. And so everyone got into that power hiking pace, but it was intense power hiking, it wasn't just a casual one. So, but I was able to maintain that pace, and we had a huge group of at least 20 people or so, all the way to the halfway point of the first loop, which is unheard of, because usually after book number 2, the train gets broken into smaller groups, and there's like 3, 4, 5 people working together. But it wasn't the case this year. Everyone was trying to hang on to the front pack, and we ended up having half of the field pretty much, sticking together all the way to the halfway point. And then it started kind of thinning out, spreading out a bit more. And yeah, by the end, we had less people for sure at the forefront.
Now, any problems finding the books? I mean, who was leading your group and doing the job of figuring out where the books were?
Well, we were all searching. Once we're in a new spot, especially if it's a new book and a new location, we have a description. We're looking, what Laz is trying to point at. We look around this and that. I was proud to find actually the book number 2. We came down to this new section, and I memorized the descriptions, where exactly it's supposed to be. And so I've kind of pictured that spot, and I saw it in reality. So like, oh my gosh, first time Laz actually meant what he said. So I found it, and I found that particular rock. I flipped it, and the book was right there. So I was like, oh, I found book number 2, and I was the first one to it. So that was pretty exciting. But it gets really, you actually want to get first to the book, because once, say, the leader gets to the book first, he rips off his page, he's gone, So if you want to make sure he or she doesn't go too far away, you want to get to the book as soon as possible and be at least in the first top 5 to rip off that page. Because if you're number 20, you get to the book, you rip it off, you have to put it back under that rock, and then you look around, everyone's gone, So there's some strategy even with that involved.
Now, was the first loop clockwise or counterclockwise this year?
Clockwise.
And at 5:17, it was probably dark at the start, but it lightened up, and it was pretty much a daytime hike of that first loop.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting thing, Doc. It's always clockwise, the first loop. It's never been a counterclockwise in the history of Barkley.
Okay, see that? I'm fascinated by the Barkley. I've gone down the deep dive down the rabbit hole, and I've learned something tonight from Ihor. Thank you so much for that. It's always clockwise on the first loop. Got it.
Yeah, but again, we never know. Maybe next year Laz will make it counterclockwise.
Do you know if Laz listens to this podcast?
I don't know. Well, we can send him a link.
Yes, let's do that.
I mean, he's doing Transcon attempt, so he'll probably be listening to a lot of stuff on his attempt across the United States.
We need to get this on his radar, because I talk about him all the time, so he should know that.
Then, I don't want to give him ideas.
All right. So what was your time on the first loop?
First loop 8:30, 8:45. You know what? I forgot.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's
Something,
accurate.
yeah.
That's in the ballpark. Because I think there was probably a group of what, 5 or 6 people that were pretty. They finished that first loop in a pretty tight
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah, we did have a big group coming in. And then the second group was right behind us with Jared Campbell and Greg Hamilton. They were right behind us as well. So, yeah. But started thinking out later, with every loop, we would lose 1, 2 people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, was there any irrational fear at the gate as Laz was counting your pages that maybe you missed a page or you dropped a page somewhere?
No, I made sure I had all those books. I had like this little pocket close to my heart. That's where I kept all my pages. And every time, like I would actually touch it every 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure it's there, even though there's nothing potentially could happen to it. But yeah, I did have that fear that, oh my goodness, I'm going to get disqualified because of such a stupid thing. And it happened before. And in fact, it happened to the runner this year. He had to go back and grab his page and return, right?
I heard
It
about that.
happened,
Yeah.
and it happened to the veteran, right? And it could happen to everyone. So, like, that's the thing. That's what makes Barkley so hard, because you got to pay attention to so many other things, and there's no room for even small errors, and because once you make this little error, little blunder, done, and it's all gone now. And you definitely don't want to DNF at Barkley because of something silly like this.
Yeah, and I can imagine you being very careful in particular and making sure you had all 15 pages, but there must still be that little bit of worry as he is counting out the pages like, "Oh my gosh, what if? What if something
Well,
happened?"
I don't know if you watched the video where it finished. So Carl was counting my pages after loop 5, and he counted 13 pages. And I'm like, there's no way I missed 2 books. I mean, maybe I was delirious and I lost one, but he said, I'm going to recount it. And what happened, 2 little pages got stuck in another one. So as he was kind of unfolding them better, he found them. And yeah, there's 15 books. And I was like, whew. But that wasn't intense. Can you imagine? I finished five loops and all of a sudden there's only 13 pages. Like, what happened to the other 2?
Nightmare, absolute nightmare scenario. All right, so you finish the first loop, you head out for the second loop. Does the second loop go counterclockwise or does it go clockwise again this year?
Yeah, I was counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise. And by this time of the day, it is probably what? It's probably late afternoon.
Yeah, yeah.
And the sun is going to be setting. It's going to be getting dark. How was that second loop going the opposite direction in the dark? You're looking at things from a brand new perspective. It's a new angle for you. It's getting dark. I mean, that's why this race is so tough.
Yeah, we were a bit nervous about a new section because we got to it right before dawn. So we were actually pushing through first half so that we could get to that new section somewhat daylight, and we did manage to do so, and it helped us because we were navigating through it. It was still kind of new to us because we saw it. Well, everything is new to me, but for the veterans, for instance, it is new. But we were able to get through it in the daylight, and then the rest of the loop was somewhat familiar for veterans, especially. And yeah, we got it through the night, and yeah, just settled into that cruising Barkley pace, and worked together on navigation, trying to find pages and books. And yeah, I think second loop was fairly uneventful.
Okay. Now, I heard somebody describe the new section, the new segment of the Barkley, as being very prickly and brambly.
Yeah, that's like basically saying nothing. It was bad, and even the first loop, so it was all new to everyone. And basically, I was somewhere in the front of this section, charging up this hill. And at some point, you can kind of choose which direction you go. And I chose the direction which in retrospect turned out to be wrong direction. It was really infested with briars. So I sliced my leg so bad, like really bad, that even Jared Campbell, after, he's like looked at my legs and he's like, "Oh man, you got a beating. You got beat up pretty bad there." And so that section is really bad. It's a navigational nightmare. It's not really straightforward, and it's covered in briars, and you can't really even walk around them. You have to go through them in certain points. But we survived. We kind of by loop 5 we found kind of the least painful, I guess, path through it. Like, there's no way you can get through it without pain, but you can find the least painful. And it took us, I guess, 5 hours to figure it out and find it, but we did find it.
Okay. Now, did the first 4 loops just alternate clockwise, counterclockwise?
Yeah.
Okay. And so anything else memorable, exciting, dangerous, in the first 4 loops that you want to share? Was there a point where you thought, I'm not going to make it. This is just too tough. There's no way I can finish.
No, we were way ahead of our time, and we had John Kelly, who is absolute genius with numbers, and he would, calculate anticipated finishing time and how much time we would have for the next loop or the last loop, and he would just keep us, all accountable, and he kept us in the loop saying, "Hey, we're actually way ahead of the schedule. We're doing amazingly great," even though we were making some mistakes here and there, navigational ones, especially with sleep deprivation building up. But even with that, we still had a lot of time left for loop 5, because I think we had just over 14 hours to finish loop 5, which is a lot of time.
Now, you just made me think of something, the way you described John Kelly. There are some races out there, some ultras that are pretty straightforward, right? There's a starting point, there's a finish point. It's a very clear map, very clear course. Marathons, for example, and really, it's a feat of strength. But this takes some smarts. This takes some ingenuity, some strategy, and thinking about things. This is not a race for someone who doesn't want to do a lot of thinking about how they're going to approach the race.
Well, that's the thing. If you want to just relax and just basically test your body, you just choose the race where there's a trail, there's course markings, and you just follow them. Here, it's a totally different, ball game, because the second you relax, you think about something and forget about the navigation, forget about where you are, forget about map, compass, you're gone. You're done. Like, Barkley's going to eat you. Barkley's going to destroy you so fast the second you relax your brain. But it's not the case here. That's why you can see so many finishers are actually exceptionally smart people, and they've achieved a lot in their lives. They're data scientists like John Kelly, or engineers like Jared Campbell. They all people that work with their brains a lot. And it's very interesting to see that they actually finished Barkley, because it's more than just a race. It's a puzzle that you have to, pieces you have to draw together while using your body and mind.
Well said. And, you could throw into that group of professions you just listed there. You could also throw in commercial insurance salesman.
I'm more like an exception there of the rule. Not very smart.
Okay. Come in, you finish the 4th loop. You've got a lot of time left. You're ahead of schedule. You got 14 plus hours left for the 5th loop. In what position do you come in on the 4th loop? Are you second? Are you third?
4th loop. No, we finished all together. Sorry, it was me and John. We came in together.
Did John touch first? Did John touch first, or did you touch first?
I think he touched first, maybe a couple of seconds ahead of me.
So he got to choose the direction for the 5th loop.
No, whoever is ready to go first.
That's true. That's exactly right. Yes, sir. Yeah. I apologize. That's right. Whoever's ready to go out on the 5th loop chooses the direction.
Yeah, people usually forget about it, but at the same time, we've already agreed with John that I'm going to take clockwise and he's going to take counterclockwise even before we touch the gate.
And what was the strategy behind that?
Well, I wanted to do clockwise because it's sort of fresh to me because we just came from there. So I wanted just to make sure I find at least the first books. He said that he wanted to challenge himself and go in the counterclockwise, and he just wanted new experience because I think last year he went clockwise the very last loop, and he said he wanted to do the counterclockwise this year. Yeah, so I feel like it's two things there. John Kelly is just an extremely nice person. He wanted to help me just make sure that I want to choose clockwise, and he let me choose it. And also he wanted new experience, which was the second thing from him. So yeah, it worked out well.
That's a big statement on him. He's a very nice guy. I've had the chance to talk to him on the podcast. Also, I want to point out that after you guys had left, Jared Campbell and Jasmin Paris also had a similar situation, and people were telling her to hurry up so she could choose the direction. And Jared Campbell said, "Hey, no rush. You what direction do you want to go? I'll go either before you or after you, depending on what direction you want to go." Which, again, the vets helping out the newbies and doing whatever they can. Jasmine's not a newbie, of course, but Jared, reaching out and letting her know that he's going to be as helpful as possible is just a testament to what kind of people are running these races out there.
Yeah, just like what Laz says, Barkley runners are not just great athletes, they're great people. And John, Jared, they both proved it. And I was just reading John's little post on Instagram that he made recently. He said, when you're on top, you're not pushing off people when they're trying to climb top as well. You're actually bringing them with you. And, I can just say that that's exactly what John did, and I'm so thankful to him for all those hours and days of guidance and wisdom out there.
Okay. Now take us out for Loop 5. You're on your own. You're no longer with anybody else. You're out there on your own. What are you thinking? How does it go? When did you know you had a shot at finishing?
Yeah, that's when Barkley starts. So warm-up is over, and it's time to race now. Thankfully, I had 14 hours. So I just went one book at a time, and I was celebrating every single book that I would find. I did spend a lot of time memorizing first 4 loops. I wasn't just following the veterans. I was doing my homework and trying to memorize every single turn, every single shrub, rock, and here and there. And when it came time to, when I would be somewhere where I wasn't sure or I couldn't remember, I would just rely on my map and compass, and can't really go, against laws of nature. And if you know how to use map and compass and you can follow it, you can read the map, it's going to bring you to where you're supposed to be. And that's what happened to me. I was extremely nervous to be on my own. But I told myself, you know what, let's go one book at a time and just celebrate those little moments and go as far as I could. And as I was progressing, I was finding these books and I was hitting them spot on, pretty much all of them. I didn't waste any time. I didn't make any big errors. I was very nervous, though, and anxious, checking my compass probably every second minute, which good orienteers would never do. But at that point, you're so sleep deprived, you're so tired that you can easily deviate and end up on the wrong ridge, on the wrong spur, that I wanted to make sure I don't, that I'm staying on this line, that I'm following the bearing. And at the end, I found all the books. And yeah, at some point, I think after Raja, because all those books left after Raja, I was fairly confident. I knew that I will find them. There's no way I can miss them. I knew that I can do it. So when I hit the Raja and went all the way down and through the tunnel, I'm like, I think I'm doing it. Like my feet were hurting so bad because I had issues with my feet. But I just told myself, you know what, there's a couple more climbs. I think 3 more climbs, but no, I'm lying. There's 2 more climbs there, pretty big. But I just told myself I can do it, I can finish it. And when I grabbed my last book, I couldn't believe it. I actually sat on the rock there. There's a beautiful view of the Frozen Head State Park. Kind of can see a portion of John Kelly's house where he grew up. And I just spent a few minutes there just looking around, just soaking it in, thinking how fortunate I am to be there. And I couldn't believe I found all 15 books, And from there, it's mostly there's no issues navigating there. And I knew that I would make it to the camp way before the cutoff. I knew that I was under 59 hours, but I wasn't sure. I didn't know if I would be the first one to finish, because I thought when I ran into counterclockwise runners, I thought they were a little bit ahead of me, but I guess I just miscalculated. I was a little bit surprised to be the first one to the gate.
Now, how many people did you encounter on going the opposite direction on that
3.
last loop?
So, I ran into John Kelly, and then there was Greg Hamilton and Jared Campbell. So 3 of them, they were really close to each other, a couple minutes. So I was surprised, oh my gosh, there's so many people on loop 7. And I guess, Damien was behind me, and then Jasmin Paris was behind Damien.
Yeah, I talked to Damien last year after his after his first attempt at the Barkley, and I was really pulling for him this year. And when I saw that he was out on loop 5, I was thinking, okay, he's going to do it this year, but he ran into a little bit of trouble. Now, when you passed people going the opposite direction on loop 5, was there friendly conversation? Was there just a nod? Was there so much tension about time that you weren't going to waste any time talking to anybody? You just kept on going?
Yeah, it's just good job, good work. When I saw Jared, I said, I'll see you at the finish line, even though I still had a bunch of books to come. But I was getting confident. And I don't know if they were surprised to see me. Maybe they were, because I am a virgin, right? They thought I would maybe get lost or, But it was really quick because they were working hard too. They knew that they were close to the cutoff, and they didn't want to waste any second per se.
Now, take me through that final stretch. The yellow gate is in your sight. Tell us about that last bit to the gate and what you had to say to Laz on the way in.
It was, it was only a few seconds, but it felt like it was entire life, when I was getting into the campsite. Interestingly, the video doesn't show it, but it's actually a pretty steep uphill going to the gate on that paved portion. So I had to work extra hard, to run up that hill at that point of the race. Finished it. Just made sure that I have all the pages. And again, there were only 13 at first, and then 2 more pages were found. So, and everyone started clapping, and Jody, my crew, came up to me and started hugging me, and he got so emotional. He was crying. It was just so sweet to see. And shook Laz's hand, and I just told him that one of the things that motivated me, that pushed me through the loop for number 5, is that I didn't really want to get second DNF from him. And he kind of chuckled about it because, I got DNF at Backyard from him, and I just want to make sure I don't get the second one.
Now, I heard a rumor that you said to him maybe he should add a 6th loop.
Yeah, well, I just dropped it there, but I didn't think I said it so loud, but apparently Keith Dunn heard it, I guess. He posted it on Twitter. I saw that, and it was more of a joke, of course. I mean, every loop is an absolute brutality on the Barkley course. So, who knows if the weather was good and we have extra 12 hours. And I mean, I did have another hour, 15 minutes there in the bank, right? So Who knows? If I had better feet, maybe I could have. But again, it's just being cocky. There's no way, I feel like it's already on the edge of possible and impossible. So adding six loop wouldn't be that possible, I think.
Yeah, you got to watch out what you say around Keith Dunn. If he hears you, it might end up in the Twitter feed. So,
right.
Yes. Now, the other thing I want to just touch upon, because it's so huge, is Jasmin Paris. I mean, if you think about it, only finishers up to this point, prior to this year, have all been men. It's been going since 1989, somewhere around there, in its current form. 86.
Yeah.
And it's only been males, and it's been, not even that many males, right? It was 17 before this year, 17 finishers total. And here you are, you have Jasmin Paris, who came so close last year, and she is out there on the fifth loop, and the minutes are counting down. I mean, it is getting very close to the end. What is the feeling like out there as everybody is waiting to see what happens with Jasmin? And I have to imagine that the pressure on her has to be enormous, because metaphorically, I mean, she's carrying half the planet on her back. She is representing all of womanhood out there, right? And so that's got to be a lot of pressure. What is the vibe? What's the feeling? Take us through Jasmin Paris coming down the stretch.
Oh, dog, it was electric. Like, it was probably, you could charge the batteries in the campsite, honestly, because, well, first, when she was spotted the broad jaw, they did a little bit of math, and pretty much everyone said, like, there's no way, like, she won't be able to make it, but the second it came down to minutes, and then all of a sudden John Kelly's son, he spotted her kind of running towards the camp, and all of a sudden we look at our watches and there's like minutes left, and we're like, oh my gosh, she is actually doing it. She is making history right here in front of us. And we all got up, we started clapping, cheering, yelling, and people were just so emotional. People were crying there just watching it. And here she comes, flying, literally. And I told you, it's uphill there. It's a slide uphill. It looks flat, but it's not flat. It's really hard to run. And she's flying there, literally burning the last drops of energy left in her. And she touches the gate with 99 seconds to spare. When you think that Carell's finish was dramatic last year, well, now think about 99 seconds. A 60-hour race comes down to literally seconds. And she touches the gate, she falls down, she looks pretty much lifeless. She literally left absolutely everything out there. Absolutely everything. She gave it all to this course. And she couldn't do any different. She had to finish, because just like you said, she had this half of the planet on her, females, and we were just so happy that she did it, because can you imagine if she was late? Can you imagine if she was a couple of seconds late? Even that would be the biggest tragedy in the sports history, to be honest. But she did it, and we got so happy for her. We were so emotional, and honestly, witnessing history, being there, it means so much. It meant so much to all of us there. So we were so proud for her. And she is so deserving of this finish, because I saw her work with males. I saw her push so hard. I knew that she was struggling, but she was capable. She was able to keep up with us. She was able to push. And she's so smart. She's a natural navigator. She saved our asses so many times out there just because she would pick it like this. She's like, I'm not here. We're in the wrong spot. We have to turn around. We have to move here. And, combination of this humility, strength, and, being a natural navigator, I knew that she deserved that finish. And she did it. And she proved everyone wrong. She proved Laz wrong, so that's the biggest thing. And it's just, I'm so happy to be a part of this history. I'm so happy to witness this history, because I know this is the story that's going to be told in books for decades.
I have goosebumps listening to your description of that finish. That had to be absolutely electric and dramatic and just overwhelming, right? I mean, the emotions that everybody had to be experiencing as she chugged down that final stretch to get to the finish. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Hey, Ihor, what's next for you? What is the next big adventure?
I don't think I'm going to have anything big anytime soon. Just going to stay in Canada, do a few local races. I'm going to see my crew, Jody. He's a big race director on East Coast. I'm going to do one of his races. I'm going to do a couple other Canadian races. Come down to States once. And my schedule is not completely set for the year, so something else might come up. Obviously not Barkley. So I'm not sure about backyard either, because it's a satellite championship. So, and it's also on east side of Canada. So I don't know if it's going to work out for me this year, but we shall see. Yeah, a few adventures planned. Hoping to stay local. We'll go from there.
Any desire to do the Barkley again?
No. Hey, true Barker will never tell you that. You know that, right?
I had to try. All right. Ihor, you know where we are right now?
You tell me. Is that where I'm giving tips?
Hiking hacks.
That's right. It's time for your hiking hack, and this segment is sponsored by the outdoor clothing brand Magnet Designs. Through hiker owned and making quality ultralight craft outdoor gear by hand in Bend, Oregon. Designed on trail, built for trail life. Visit magnetdesigns.com with no E in designs. So, Ihor, what trail wisdom do you have for our listeners to make their next outdoor adventure even better? Even if their next outdoor adventure is not the Barkleys or the backyard, if they're just out on a day hike or some other excursion, what tip do you have for them?
What tip could I give them for a hike, eh?
Or outdoor adventure?
I usually recommend just actually get out and do something. I'm pretty sure no matter where you live, even if you live in this big city, pretty sure there's some little park somewhere in the backyard where you can step out and go for a walk. Take your dog with you. Here's a tip. Take your dog with you. All right? Because your dog is the biggest partner. I personally have a dog. She's amazing. She's my trail buddy, trail partner. And she sometimes gets me out when I don't want to, So if you don't have a dog, get a dog and make him or her your trail buddy. There you go. Here's a tip from me.
Love it. Absolutely love that one. That's great. All right. So there you have it. We are just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Ihor for this exhilarating episode. I want to thank him for joining us this week. Ihor, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your next adventures?
I am on Instagram, I guess, and on my ultra sign up, the schedule is open there as well. I'm not as often on Facebook, but I do have an account there as well. But yeah, and I'm on Strava for sure. My account is open to public. You can see where I run. You can see where I live. You can follow all my training. I welcome people to follow. I don't recommend doing the same what I'm doing. It might not work for you, but it might work for you, But I love being on Strava. I love seeing others train and picking their ideas because I don't have a coach. So sometimes I would get these new ideas from people doing interesting things on Strava. And Strava always helps to, discover new trails and plan for new adventures.
Okay. Now remember to check out Hiker Trash Radio on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And we have a new and improved, newly revamped website at hikertrashradio.com. Make sure you check that out. And if you have comments or clips you want to share with us, you can send it to me at hikertrashradio@gmail.com.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, we can't always be out on the trail. And when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So, Ihor, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. This could be a book or a movie or a documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. What recommendation do you have for us to keep us connected to the trail when we can't be out there?
Sure. Since we are talking about Barkley, I recommend a few Barkley, movies and one book in particular that I really love. We mentioned Where Dreams Go to Die, Gary Robbins, classic. I do recommend watch it. It's electric. It's going to motivate you. It's going to make you cry. It's going to make you emotional. It's going to make you happy. It's a great movie out there. And obviously, The Race That Eats Its Young, it's free on YouTube now. Watch it. It's about the history of Barkley. You can get a few snippets of what Barkley actually is and just get some understanding about Barkley. And as for books, I do recommend the book of Ed Furto, Stories from Out There, where he's the first Barkley finisher from back in the day when Barkley was only 3 loops. So he finished 3 loops, and he is basically storytelling and telling about all those years from 1986 about the Barkley history, how it all started, how it all developed, how many years Barkley won, that there were no finishers whatsoever. It's very captivating, and I do recommend it for sure. And I got to meet Ed Furto at Barkley this year. I got to shake his hand, which was quite a bonus for me. He's such a nice person.
That is so cool. And thank you for those recommendations. I'll also throw in there 17, the story of Carl Sabe's race and finish last year. Very good. Very well done. And I cannot wait to see the documentary that's going to come out on Jasmin Paris, because there has to be one, right? I mean, there has to be one that takes us through that moment.
Yeah, and I hope that it's going to be done by the same director as the 17, Fabian. He's just amazing at what he's doing, and he was at Barkley this year, and he definitely collected a lot of material, so he will definitely be making a movie, or I hope so.
Okay.
What have we not asked you?
And before we wrap things up, just one more segment for you, Ihor, called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? Let's again make this about the Barkley. What did I not ask you about the Barkley that you thought I would?
Oh, you asked me a lot, I don't even know. I think you asked me too much, actually. Even the questions the things I'm not supposed to tell you. But
all right, I'll take that as a win. If I asked you enough, that's good then.
I think you asked me more than enough. Yeah, for sure. You're really good, Doc. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. All right. Hey, we are finished. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, Ihor. We wish you the very best in your future adventures, and hope you'll consider coming back at some point and sharing some more stories with us. As we close up today, any shout outs to friends and family? I know we've already mentioned Gary Robbins. We've mentioned Jody. Anybody else you want to shout out?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to our amazing community here in Chilliwack and in BC, Canada, everyone who was supporting me. My phone was dead pretty much by the time I came back, and it's from all the notifications and all shout outs and, all the support. I'm really lucky to have this supportive community, entire nation pretty much, standing behind me. That's another reason why I couldn't stop and I had to touch that gate 5 times.
I'll also shout out Frank the Tank Heelan, who kind of put us together. And also some of the folks that we've talked about tonight and haven't talked about who have been on the podcast before. Shout out to John Kelly. Shout out to Aurelian Sanchez. And I'm forgetting him. John Fegavarisi.
Oh, yeah. John Feggy. Yeah.
Yeah. Damian Hall.
Yeah. Ultra Demo.
And speaking of John Feggy, I mean, he's a college professor. So another example of those smart guys out there that are able to finish.
And he was also the virgin when he got his first finish. Well, first and only. Yeah.
You, Feggy, and Aurelian, all virgin
Well,
first-time
no,
finishers.
I think there's 6 people. Yeah, so Aurelian, Brett Money,
Mm-hmm.
the one who owns the course record, Mark Williams, and Jaron Campbell. He also finished it in his first year.
Okay. This has been a fantastic episode. Really, really enjoyed talking to you, Ihor. Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if the terror is really setting in as you're waiting for the guy with the beard to light the cigarette at the yellow gate. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.